I think one of the best pictures I've ever seen. It has a picture of a mountain on it with a guy's planting a flag in the ground, and the flag says "Go Live," and it's like, yes, we're live. And then right next to it is an even bigger mountain that says "Change Management."
And welcome everybody to Equality Podcast Season 2. We're happy to have with us today Kyle Kumpf. Kyle is a financial services process wizard, and he's here to talk to us about lean process improvement in the financial sector. So we're pretty excited, Kyle. We don't have a lot of banking people on here. Hope I can call you a banking person. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Sure. I'm an accidental banker or an artificial banker, however you want to call it. I have to take PTO to go play golf. So I guess normal bankers don't have to do that.
I think you're playing the game wrong, Kyle.
Yeah.
Well, we were excited to have you on the show because we highlight lean and continuous improvement, and there's a lot of people in that space, in manufacturing and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of excitement and interest outside of kind of your typical production environment. And so we try to highlight folks that have experience in other sectors. So financial services, I know I wish that pretty much all of the banks and lending institutions I work with were lean. So to get in touch with you was pretty cool. I didn't even know it was a thing. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, what's cool, and what in the hell lean finance even is.
Yeah, we'll get to lean finance because I don't know if it exists yet, but that's the passion of mine to try and get that to exist. But I have an interesting career path. I went to school for engineering, worked as a traditional engineer in a warehouse for a while, went out into consulting and consulted in lean and continuous improvements. And then one day woke up and I was working for a bank. Don't know what happened there. And talking to people that work for financial institutions, they say that a lot. They say, yeah, no one wakes up or goes to school or, thinks little, I'm going to be a banker. I'm going to work for a bank. They just accidentally fall into it and then they never leave. And here I am 6 years later, still working for the same financial institution. Learned a lot. It's a very interesting and intriguing industry. But like you said earlier, a lot of this stuff that's worked in manufacturing and other physical environments, it absolutely applies to the office, the hidden factory that is within our offices. And there are many of those hidden factories in banks and in their back offices. And so I spend my days in those areas. When I first got into financial services, I was brought on as a process improvement manager. And first big project was on our credit, our commercial lending value stream. I think I was the first one to refer to it as a value stream. So I taught people some new terms and walked them through what that meant and, what a process is and showed them that, we're not building cars here, but we are assembling a loan. There are steps to that, parts to that, policies and procedures that guide that. And then I've moved on through the organization since then. And other similar projects that I've also managed a functional area on our operations side. And then now I'm in our portfolio management office. Responsible for process and continuous improvement of how we initiate and then execute projects to solve our problems.
Can you please just the queue line when you walk into a bank, fix that? Because that's always the biggest nightmare when I walk into a bank.
Wait. You still walk into a bank?
So, fair enough. But you know what? I'm not gonna drop the company name, but I'll totally get John to drop the company name. And they force you for several critical forms where they'll write my ex-wife's name and mine. And now you're saying I have to go to a bank and I have to bring my ex-wife with me to sign this document. Fuck you, bank. What are you doing to me?
Yeah, so now that we've sufficiently established how old Jake is, so in the financial services world, maybe you could give a brief outline to our audience about the different sectors that are sort of, legislation, right? Regulation determines what different institutions can do. And maybe just give a brief lay of the land for everybody on what the world of finance looks like right now.
Yes, it's definitely very very regulated, one of the most regulated industries in the world. Depending on your institution size, generally by assets, determines who your regulating body is. A lot of, regional size banks, probably regulated by the FDIC and Federal Reserve Bank. The bigger ones, once you start getting over 30 billion assets and definitely over 50 billion in assets, and you've got the OCC breathing down your neck, and they've got their own list of what I'll call rules and standards that are there, and they're typically a little more prescriptive at that point, and they're just harder to abide by. But all these regulations, it sounds like we're constrained in what we can do, but in reality, if you think about it, banks and other financial institutions, we are essentially doing business with our inventory is money. It's deposits that don't belong to us. So we're holding the money of other people who are depositing their money into our institution. And so there's a reason to have regulations, so that we don't lose that money. So we make sure we're doing what we're supposed to with it. But they can definitely make it challenging to try and make improvements to any process, large and small. But that's just part of the complicated environment that we have to navigate.
And since it's a fractional reserve system, that means you can create new inventory out of thin air, right?
Yeah, magically, we've got new inventory.
Yeah, how do you, in the finance industry, get the actual voice of the customer? What method is there that exists for both internally and externally to get that data set?
That is a good question. What we do where I work today, and what I know of a lot, it's really popular in a lot of institutions, is surveys. We all get peppered with surveys. After every transaction we do, you might get an email or a text, whether it's going to the bank, grocery store, the doctor. They're sending a text, hey, how was your experience today? What would you like us to do better, or something like that? There's a place for that, but I always find surveys to be very moody. Even if if I'm in a bad mood, nothing to do with you, Jake, but if you send me a survey on how this podcast was today, tomorrow and I'm in a bad mood, I might give it a poor rating just because tomorrow I'm pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be kind of careful with that.
Isn't there another issue there though with the surveys? Because I have gotten quite a few surveys. I mean, to the point I just did throw them out now, right? From my banking institutions, right? I'm not going to mention any names, but it kind of rhymes with case. But they send they send this survey out. They send this survey out, and the problem is that the questions have diddly squat to do with my experience of the bank. Completely unrelated. Like, how was the service person's attitude today on a scale of 1 to 5? Well, I don't even know. I don't even care. I had a problem and nobody could fix it, right? Mm-hmm. Or I had to wait, on the line for 60 minutes. So you have like these scale of 1 to 10, like they pre-decided what they want information about instead of asking me, how can we create value for you, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that's pervasive across multiple surveys, multiple industries. I like that you brought up I think something about calls or wait times. So I know one of the common metrics in many industries is average call time. They want to keep that down to a pretty minimal measure. Okay, great. You're answering and resolving every call or ending every call in under 2 minutes. Great. Did you solve the problem that the customer called in for? Like, measure that. Yeah. It's a simple yes or no. Did we or did we not? Measure that. But no one does it, so you can't benchmark against it. That's one of the objections you'll get. But I think that'd be a very valuable measure.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I would, as a banking customer or any customer, right? I would rather have confidence that who I'm talking to can solve my problem and get a call back or schedule a callback time. So for my checking account, I do business with like a regional, a local bank, and I can call the local branch and talk to a human, and I know their names and faces, and all of that. And, I'll call them up and say, hey, I'm trying to import this thing from China, and, my card is going to block it because, the fraud protections we have nowadays. They'll be like, oh, okay, Mr. Thacker. Well, Susie is on the line with another customer. She's the one that changes the setting and in the computer for you. But can I have her call you back, in 20 minutes or something like that? Sure. Yeah. Or no, I'm busy. I'm working. But how about 11:30? Yeah, no problem. Right. I'm happy to do that. I can work with another person, to schedule. What I don't want to do is sit there for 45 minutes or even 2 minutes and not get helped, right?
Right.
So that's kind of a critical part of lean, right? Is if you can't define how you create value for the customer, then you kind of can't do lean, and you might be, rapidly improving or continuously improving the wrong thing or the wrong direction.
Right. And do you know who your customer is? Can you define your customer? I found that to be a challenge for some organizations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Example that I use with folks is, do you buy Oreo cookies? Okay.
Yes. So, yes. 100% of the time.
So Jake, you've already heard this. You can't answer, but who makes Oreo cookies?
Nestle, right?
It's Mondelez. Yeah, it's Mondelez. Which
Mondelez, for all you people out there that can say it right.
It's pronounced Mondelez.
Mondelez.
It's French. I'm a Jean Thacker. I know how to pronounce Mondelez. By the way, did you see my new audio next to my name in LinkedIn?
I did not.
It's
I'll have to check that out now.
I've got to. He put himself as the Justin Bieber of Six Sigma, and I thought, oh, this is great, just based on a conversation a few days ago. And,
what does that even mean?
Exactly.
We don't know.
So yeah. You're saying you're a Six Sigma train wreck? Is that it?
With tattoos.
$100 million train wreck with daddy problems.
Yeah. It literally means nothing, right? Yeah. Like most headlines on LinkedIn. Here's the point. The point is that if you have a problem with your Oreos, you don't go to Mondelez. You don't even know who they are. Most people don't. Right? You go to Walmart or wherever you bought them. Right? Mm-hmm. Ease. Mondelez. So Mondelez's customer is Walmart, not me. I'm the consumer. Mm-hmm. And Walmart really has all of the power in the relationship because they can tell these manufacturers, it's $100,000 slotting fee just to get on the shelf. And if you want prime real estate or an end cap, let's talk, right? Mm-hmm. We're only going to carry 3 flavors. Well, now all of a sudden your marketing department, your product development department is like, okay, we really have to come up with the 3 best ideas because if it's not on the Walmart shelf, we're not really going to sell it, right? So there are, I think, a lot of industries like that where the consumer and the customer aren't the same. And I think finance can be like that sometimes, depending on the product.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting. So I work for a bank holding company, and then we have 11 independently chartered banks in different states under us that have their own brands. And that's, the customers know that local bank. But then the back office where all the processing happens is in the holding company. And they until recently, the bank logos, like the customers had no idea Heartland existed, are now HTLF. Well, now the bank logos say powered by HTLF. That's the first time we've ever really told the world, like, hey, there's this other entity behind these organizations that you work with face to face. So that's a good point because we have end customer who's opening up with deposit accounts or such or applying for loans at this bank who's then punching in numbers into a computer to submit the application that then comes to the holding company level and is underwritten and decisioned and then funded.
So what are some of your targets? What are you actually trying to improve? Is that a lead time? Is that a quality of service? What is your go-to?
I've been tasked with improving many different measures. Service level agreements are a popular one in the industry. Turnaround times. How often do we hit our targets? The typical type measures that you'll see measured everywhere. One of my pet peeves is trying to measure everything. And then you spend all your time measuring, and actually you don't spend any time improving. You're just trying to figure out, how do we measure this? And some of the metrics I've seen people try to come up with, the titles of them sound like you need a PhD to even understand what the title. It's like some, the penetration mix of XYZ markets in Southwest America or United States. It's like, okay,
longitude 41.3,
yeah,
latitude.
What is that? How is that going to help us?
Yeah. I'll tell you, in my life, I haven't measured.
At this point, Rat launched into a rather lengthy diatribe about the benefits of soda water on seasickness, a turn in the conversation that Toad found to be altogether tiresome. Jake, now I have to edit that out. When we talk about metrics and, you mentioned like measuring too much, of course, that's a big problem. I've helped a lot of companies figure out like, what should we be measuring? How much should we measure? How many things? So, frequently for me, what I start with is, what's the value proposition to the customer? Like, how do we define value to the customer, right? And usually the people doing the work, know intuitively like what we're bad at. And so we just pick one of those to start with. But my general rule of thumb is, I don't mind collecting data, especially if it's semi-automated or automated, because I'll be able to refer to it later. But I'm only actively tracking and charting and making an effort to collect data on what I'm improving right now. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're so right. Like, you can only move as fast as you can move, with the improvement. So spending a lot of bandwidth measuring stuff that I'm not even going to look at for a year, 6 months, 18 months, is just a waste of talent I can be using to improve something right now, right?
I have definitely had cases where you're a CI manager or you're an industrial engineer, and 80-90% of your job is sending out reports to data we don't do anything with.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
there was
Kyle, you see that? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. There was when I was consulting, I was working with a medical clinic, and there was some monthly report that they would send out that one or two people would complete or compile this report. It took them about a week to actually put this report together. That was as of the end of the previous month, and then they'd send it out to a bunch of executives and directors. And finally, one day they asked the question in a meeting, like, who reads this? At that point, it was still printed. Like, does anyone read this? What is that? Oh, I had no idea we even had this report. And so they looked through it and they're like, yeah, there's like one thing here that might be useful, and we can get that over here. So they just stopped making that whole report and say those to people that week of time. That kind of stuff's pervasive. But back to measuring, when I took over part of operations, one of that team, a lot of their work came in via these tickets, some kind of request to do some maintenance on an account. And they have a measure prior on, okay, each person needs to get X tickets done per day, whatever that was, 25 or 50 tickets a day. And if everyone's hitting that target, then we're getting enough tickets done. But what I found was that our customer, our bank employees, were not happy with the service they were getting, whether their tickets they were submitting were not done quickly enough, or they weren't done right. So we were tracking turnaround times and seeing how long it was taking to get tickets done. And there were a few outliers. Most of them were getting done really quickly, but there was a few outliers that weren't. And but measuring just get tickets done was driving the wrong behaviors, because tickets were coming into a queue and they were cherry picking. Well, I'm going to pick the easy ones, get the easy ones done, so I can get my goal for the day and not worry about it. Well, then that was leave someone else with all the hard, complex tickets, and then they couldn't hit that target. And so I came in, I said, I don't care how many tickets you get done every day. I don't care if it's 10 or 50. I care that you get those 10 done right or those 50 done right. And then trying to work them in some way that we're getting them done quickly. And we established a goal asking our customer, like, what is the expectation? Well, we want everything done in an hour. Well, okay, well, we can't do everything in an hour. So we started off with a target. How about, because we were averaging about 4.5 days. It's like, how about we just cut that in half? That's the first one. Go to 2 days. And then from there, if we hit that, then let's see if we can get down to, 1 day. And that's what we were able to work on. But then that drove different behaviors, because then people weren't just cherry picking tickets. They were picking them up as they came in. And then we realized, oh, well, we're getting a high mix of tickets. So I use the example, I think I posted about this on LinkedIn. If you're equating the amount of work to a piece of fruit, you can eat a bunch of grapes real easily. But if you got to eat a watermelon in between, it kind of throws you off. And so we found a way to filter and sort these tickets into essentially kind of families. That way you could go to these different queues and then clear them out very quickly, put some standards around it, create a standard work. If we hit, certain levels within them, we had decision trees that the team could pick up, look at, wouldn't have to come get me. They could look at the decision tree and know what to do. And they could reorganize staff to make sure this work's getting done without, hey, Kyle, we have a problem over here. We don't know what to do. And it was obviously it happened overnight, but over the course of a few months, that's what we were able to do. And it was awesome. But that was all just, it wasn't me coming in the department saying, hey, we got to measure everything. And you guys need to do this, this, and that. It was, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve here? What's our customer telling us? And let's work with them to set some initial targets and work to achieve those and learn as we go and use whatever we need, whatever countermeasure we need to do that.
Yeah, that is a dearth I see pretty much across industries, where we don't spend enough time examining what behaviors the system actually incentivizes. And with some interesting examples, I was just chatting with an engineer friend of mine last night, actually. And he said, you know what? In my last job, I had always worked so hard and was coming after it as absolutely hard as I could for 12 hours a day, every day. And in my new role, I'm doing the same thing, different company. And I just find that I'm not real engaged. I'm not real going after it. I'm like, what is wrong with me? And then so I started asking questions about the difference between the two companies. And it became very immediately apparent that the system, like how that company behaves and what they're trying to accomplish and how they go about it, is what was driving your behavior to act in that way, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Deming talks a lot about that.
Yeah, definitely. Systems thinking, right? Some of the interest in Deming and the exaggeration online, is just coming from folks that have never had the opportunity to study complex systems, right? So if you talk to your average engineer, at least at the graduate level for sure, they just finished modeling a hurricane using 6 differential equations in the imaginary number line. Like, what Deming's talking about is very common among, some fields of study, with the added element of psychology. There's a lot of folks that they're like, wow, I've never thought this way before. This is so interesting and intriguing. It's a really good example of how the average business leader is average, right? There's a lot of specialized fields of study that have a lot you can bring to bear, on the current state. And we shouldn't expect leaders to know everything. We talk on the podcast sometimes, Jake and I, all the time, about the Ubermenschen philosophy and what color cape is your new boss wearing? It's really not a effective or realistic approach. Whereas, really leaders should be using everything at their disposal and getting the team to work together and share their collective knowledge. Because I'll bet if you talk to the industrial engineer on your team, they're probably pretty familiar with Deming and everything else, right? You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be a leader.
Yeah,
Kyle had a recent post I loved where he said, you should celebrate not needing a hero. And I thought that was very moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, hero culture is another pet peeve of mine. I got a lot of pet peeves. I should come up with a name for them besides pet peeve. But it's just that hero culture. There's a line in the movie Mission Impossible 2. Every hero needs a villain. And so if you are a hero, and if you say our company has a hero culture, well, on the surface, that might sound, that sounds fun. Well, no, not really, because in order for that person to be a hero, there has to be some kind of crisis, some kind of fire going on constantly for there to be heroes, for them to swoop in, save the day, and then, go back off into the sunset. And if that's the type of environment that your company's operating in, that's just got to be grueling to everyone else. Yeah, it's great for the hero because they get celebrated, get promoted, get a bonus, whatever. But then when that problem props up again, well, then it's the line workers that are getting impacted by that. And they're like, well, we had the same problem last week. Now we got to call in Johnny again and have him swoop in and come in here and fix the problem for us. Again, that's for you. Yeah. Like you said, John, it's getting the team together to solve that problem. The one's doing the work. That hero could swoop in as the leader and help facilitate that, so that you have that knowledge share, and that the people doing the work, put the countermeasure in, come with the countermeasure, and then test it. So that way you're developing them to then solve their own problems versus them being dependent on you to come in all the time and help them out.
I love that. So let me ask Kyle, what do you find are the most powerful levers, like within the problems you experience in the finance industry? Is it connecting with people? Is it changing rules? What is the primary lever there to improvement?
The primary lever sorry, you kind of broke up there a little bit. I'll make sure I heard the question correctly. Did you repeat that?
Yeah. So I love what you were saying about hero culture. My question is, in the finance industry, doing what you're doing, what are the primary levers to move forward? Is that people connection? Is that changing rules, strategy, systems? What does that look like?
Just write everybody up. Just say, you know what, yeah, new sheriff in town.
You get a pink slip. You get written up.
Oprah Winfrey of write-ups. Yeah. Everyone's getting a write-up.
The write-up. Yeah. No, I was on My Favorite Mistake with Mark Raven sharing my write-up story where I gave a write-up I didn't think I should have given, but that's a whole nother conversation. No, I think you said people connection. I would say relationships, which I say is really important everywhere. But when I first came into the organization, like I didn't have any direct team that reported to me, so I had to influence without authority. And I can't do that if no one knows me, if no one knows what I'm really trying to do. So I spend a lot of time just kind of walking my offices and saying hi and going and getting coffee or having lunch with people, just to build that relationship. Because that's what opens the door then to deeper discussions around actual methods for how do we get better, or what do we even need to change. If I walk in the door for day one and said, hey, let's go fix loan turnaround, decision turnaround time. Some people might have been like, oh yeah, great, let's do that. But the people that I probably really need to work with to do that would have been like, oh great, here's some new project we got to do. We're already busy enough. Kyle thinks he knows everything. We wouldn't have gotten anywhere very quickly. So that's definitely it, is building those relationships. But then you also mentioned rules. And one of the things I have found, especially in banking, where you have all these regulations that are, each regulation's that thick, lots to dig through. It's interpreting those rules and what they're really saying. If you're trying to read into them too much, you might say that, oh, it's saying we can't do this. Well, in reality, yeah, we can do that. I think in reality they're there to set some guidelines. And yes, they are open to some interpretation, but I always like to say, be careful not to over-interpret the regulations. Otherwise, you're going to end up constraining yourself and never moving forward with anything. You're just going to think, oh, we're stuck. Here's our little box. Think of the what's the movie with Will Smith and Kevin Hitch? He's like, just stay in your box, right here. Just stay in your box. Like that. It's very easy for banks and other organizations, I think, that are heavily regulated to get stuck in that box because they think they're just surrounded by these regulations that they can't get free of. When in fact they're really just hurting themselves because they're misinterpreting them or over-interpreting them.
Yeah, I 100% get that. Before every podcast episode, I have to call John for a 2-hour rules and regulations review, where he gives me a long list of the stuff I can't talk about or mention.
And then we break it all in the first 2 minutes anyway.
Yeah, so. Just immediately. We have to cut out the whole 5 minutes of conversation.
So, yeah, I was going to say, it was the word penetration not on those rules and regulations.
Thankfully, I threw it out. Thankfully, we're regulated by the SEC, so it takes 4 years to resolve the issues.
And your penalty is 1% of the money you made off of it.
And since we don't monetize the podcast, we're okay.
So the joke's on
them. 0. So I like the sort of recognition, that people run the business, people make change. And so, of course, relationships is, a critical part of guiding change. And of course, that's true in every industry. And I suppose from where I'm sitting, what I'm most curious about is the senior management, the CEOs, the boards of directors, et cetera, in finance, because in manufacturing, there are enough companies that recognize what lean is, right, and are interested in implementing it. And then there's some outliers that aren't really interested in being a lean company. They're kind of more interested in, can I use this tool here and this method here and see some results, But I'm not, aware that lean is even a conversation, in finance. And you said something earlier about that. So tell us a little bit about where senior leadership is in the industry and maybe where you see it going.
Well, I definitely say that there is a growing interest in it. So, it started in manufacturing. There's been a big movement in healthcare. But, in healthcare, that conversation started somewhere. I would say in the financial industry, we're kind of at that point where it's becoming more known. They see, okay, it's happening over here, here, and here. What can we do with it? I do know of a couple of banks that I would say they're pretty far along, relatively speaking, like they're adopting lean as a philosophy, with some leaders, with senior management support. And then there are others that are more, it's middle management who are familiar with it. And so they're trying to drive it out from the middle up, middle down, which maybe works sometimes, but we all know what happens when the top doesn't buy into it. It just tends to die out. So that's where I think that's in my experience, that's where I think the industry is. So I've been talking with, peers at other banks, and they're like, the industry is just ripe with opportunity for the next kind of big, not only just lean movement, but just continuous improvement in general in financial services.
You've mentioned it several times on your LinkedIn, but I would like to minute for the audience. Explain how that goes hand in hand with your golf game.
Continuous improvement in my golf game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think it really comes down to the scientific method. It's, plan, do, study, act. In golf, if I want, the end goal is to shoot the lowest score possible. That happens over the course of 18 holes doing certain things right. Obviously, it's easier to score lower if you're hitting greens regulation. It's easier to hit greens regulation if you're hitting fairways, not having to hit a green from behind a tree. If you're avoiding hazards. So that all really starts on that first tee shot of, if I want to hit the fairway, what club selection gives me the best chance of hitting the fairway? And then you're taking into account the environment, the wind, your uphill, downhill.
That's the plan, right? And then you actually have to golf, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. So you hit your shot. It's okay. That kind of measure worked. I hit the fairway. Well, now you're in the next condition. Now I got to hit the green, which is a totally different environment. You got to plan for that shot and execute that shot. And you got to keep doing that continuously for 18 holes, hopefully with the, resulting in the lowest score. And so that's one way to attribute, continuous improvement to golf. But I'll also not just go to the course and practice like that. I'll go to the range like I did yesterday morning, and I just practiced one thing. Set down some alignment sticks and made sure that practice my pre-shot routine, stepping in, hitting a shot. And I come back out, step back, walk back in, hit the shot. I didn't really care how I hit the shot. I was more worried about, can I get into a rhythm of this pre-shot routine that sets me up? If I create that or build that as a habit, I get very comfortable up when I walk up to the ball, swing, hit, and that, professionals will tell you that's what makes them so good is they just have that routine that allows them to get set and go. And that's something that amateurs struggle with because obviously they don't have all the time to practice on it. But I'll go do that and I'll just practice on one little thing here at a time on the range and then try and take that out to the course and practice it. and then study how that worked and what effect did it have on my game.
I really like that example that you shared for a couple of reasons. One is that at one regional distribution center that I worked at, we had a small-ish, probably 20,000 square feet actually, area that was non-production, right, offline, that was just for practice. And they had a fork truck course set up there with different conditions, including an area with like bumper pads, like off a NASCAR track or something, where they would pour different materials on the floor, and people would practice driving through it and controlling their lift after getting this liquid on their wheels. But they also used to set up not really production lines because it was a warehouse, but there's more value add work being added into the supply chain lately. So repackaging, special packaging, stuff like that. And they would practice there. And it was amazing how when they were looking at the operation, they could figure out what people struggled to do consistently. And the first thing they would do is just talk to the team, right? Like, why is this so challenging? So decal, which is basically you have a full pallet of goods, the same thing, and you put them onto a conveyor belt, which eventually sorts it to different customers, right? Well, it's not ergonomic. Like the pallet should be over here. You should be doing a 90-degree turn. You're doing a 180 turn, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But then they would go set it up in this test environment, and the employees would just go do it. And like they would pay somebody the first 2 hours of the day, you're just doing this. You're just practicing. And they'd have a coach there. And they made a, kind of a game out of it. Like the coach would wear a referee shirt and have a whistle and stuff like that. And one of them was a retired like Army Ranger or something. And he would pretend to be a drill sergeant. And sometimes he'd like bring his hat in and stuff, So they had a blast with it. And it was just this idea of, for PDCA, practice offline if you can. Yep. So you're not actually interrupting or destroying something. And then, it's sometimes just 2 hours of practice on a basic motion, a basic action from one employee. All of a sudden, they're a superstar. Like they go back out to the floor and they have top production, right? So I like that example of practicing one specific thing, until you're good at it. And I've seen it used effectively in some, fairly simple work environments. Jake, are you all right?
Yeah, are we boring you there, Jake? Sound like you were yawning.
Oh, am I getting some feedback or noise? I have some heartburn.
Oh, I got you. Hold on. I'll be back directly. All right. You can have berry or you can have cherry lemon.
I'm good with the berry.
Oh, cherry lemon. I don't think I've ever heard of that combination before.
There you go. Just open wide. I'll just get that in there. Well, I think that's why I bought it. I was so intrigued. I was like, they actually paid someone to sit down, right? First, they fed him a pot of chili. They're like, to test this, you have to have heartburn. So the guy's there. He's like eating a whole pot of chili. And then he's eating these, mint-flavored antacid. And he's like, this is so gross, like mint and chili. And he just started experimenting. Like, I wonder what tastes good when I'm burping up chili. I think cherry lemon. That's the flavor I came up with. Like somebody got paid to do this.
That's also John's handle on OnlyFans. Cherry lemon. I caught primarily from both PDCA cycles, which I love. Both of us talking about focusing on one thing, getting out and actual practice. You two, not myself. Getting out and actually practice one step at a time until it works, and then expanding. And there's a nice phrase there that John likes to repeat incredibly often, where it says, "Go smooth to go slow to go fast," or something to that nature. Maybe John, you could say it a little better, that I just relate to so much.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yep. I first heard that phrase on the movie, I think Shooter.
That's what it's from. It's from firearms training. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to put a weapon on target, right? What do they say in Old West? Slap leather, You have to practice slow because that's smooth. And then you can, get your weapon on target more quickly than somebody who's trying to move quickly, right? Mm-hmm. it's a truism based on human physiology, and it's true for everything. If you're practicing your tennis serve, your golf swing, everything else, you don't start out maximum velocity, right? Your baseball
No.
pitch. But I think it's a good analogy for physical systems in production where, you're not talking about the firing of neurons in the human body, right? And establishing that pathway, and then you can go more quickly. But it is really similar. You have to establish the repeated habit before you can go fast with that habit, right? Because you don't have, if you're going quickly, you don't have as much time to respond to variance.
Yeah, I remember my first job out of college at the warehouse I was working in. We had just set up a new packing area, and I remember the first day we were live, the goal was let's ship 400 boxes today. That was the goal, 400. By the time I left that company, that line, that area could ship out 35,000 orders in a day. So you never could have started off, okay, we're going to ship 35,000 a day. What?
Right. Right.
We're new at this.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's the same, principle is like when you're learning to drive, you learn to drive in the parking lot, not on the Autobahn, because you don't have as much time to react, right? So, having smooth systems, also having gone through the PDCA cycle and experiencing some failures, some failure modes, hopefully you have like a PFMEA or something close, what the risks are and you've had to handle them before. So you can deploy the countermeasures more quickly. So if you haven't done that yet, trying to go fast, when something comes up, it's like crashing on the Autobahn.
Something you talk about there, that practice area that you were describing, I think that's something that can become more commonplace in office environments. So I find that we don't do that. So a lot of what we do is it's on the computer screen, it's using technology, and technology has different environments. You have your production environment, but then you also have your test and maybe your development environment, which are kind of sandboxes. Well, only the IT people play around in there, and that's where they're building whatever we tell them to. But I think we need to, if we're going to deploy some new process that's in some application, well, let's put it out there in that test environment and have the users actually go use it, which theoretically you should be doing in your UAT portion of the process. But let's just, even if it passes testing, we know it works, now just get everyone in there and using it and practice it. That way, when it's live, they're already up to speed, they can use it. If you're pushing out to production, now all of a sudden, it's Monday morning and my process has changed. If I'm trying to, underwrite a loan, now everything I knew last week is now it's different. Right. And you're just going to end up shooting yourself in the foot. And I think if you took that approach to let them practice, whether it's for a day or half a day or 2 hours, you probably reap a lot of benefit from doing that. That's enough. An area of opportunity I see in office environments that I very rarely see used.
Just in every production and distribution environment I've ever been in, like step one, engineer the capacity for training. 2, actually conduct training. Any kind, even if it's crappy, even if it's discussion without bullet points, it's infinitely more valuable than a company that does not. And I see all the time companies that they don't have a training plan at all, or it's a plan in a dusty binder that never gets referenced or talked about.
Hi, Jay. Welcome to International Freight Network. Today, you get to shadow Johnny. Just do everything that he does.
Yeah. No, we actually had a problem. I managed a project to implement some new project management software. And initially, when we started the project, we were just going to do one release into production, and then it's going to be live for everyone to use. So then we decided to break it off and do 2. And for the first release, it would be live only for actual project managers, so that they could get used to using the system prior to all their stakeholders and project team members using the system. Because if they didn't know how to use it, their team was going to come to them and be like, well, what do I do? How do I track my tasks now? How do I update my actions and all that stuff? Where do I find risks and such? So we gave them time, a month in advance to get familiar with it. So that way, once their stakeholders came online, they could help then onboard and train them to use this new way of managing projects. Sounds great in theory, and there was some benefit to it, but I think one of the best pictures I've ever seen has a picture of a mountain on it with the guys planting a flag in the ground, and the flag says "Go Live," and it's like, yes, we're live. And then right next to it is an even bigger mountain that says "Change Management." Now we've changed everyone's world. Now we got to get up this mountain And it takes a lot of effort. But again, if you have that training plan and you never enact it, you're never going to get past that change management mountain, and you're probably going to end up regressing backwards from what you initially tried to do with whatever it was that you tried to deploy.
Yeah, that's a great call out there. And we use the practice method on pretty much everything. So I think one of the areas in my career that receives the least attention is training frontline and middle management on basic conflict resolution, people skills, how to deliver a write-up, right? So I had an operations manager, and we had to write up a supervisor. So supervisor is first level of management, operations manager is second level of management, right? And this ops manager had never written anybody up before. Well, that's setting them up to fail, right? That's a skill they have to have, right? So initially, I was just going to write the supervisor up myself, right? And when I say write up, this was a performance improvement plan, right? And I don't mean that as a euphemism for the first step in the firing process. I mean, he needed to improve his performance, and we were going to do everything we could to help this individual. So I took the ops manager into the conference room, and we did this a couple times, I think, and just spent 30 minutes. And I was a complete asshole. It's just like, okay, pretend I'm so-and-so, and we're going to act this out. I'm not John, I'm so-and-so, okay? So I'd walk into the room, you'd say, okay, so-and-so, come on in and have a seat. And I'd be like, no, I'm going to stand. What's up? I got stuff to do. Man, get out of my face. Hey, let's talk about your performance. Whatever, man. You've been gunning me, for me for a while. And I just played that role. And at first, it was very frustrating. Come on, it's not going to be like this in real life. I'm like, how do you know? Right. So after doing this a few times, this particular manager was very comfortable. And sure enough, the real conversation was a lot easier than that, right? But he developed the confidence because he responded to so many possible conversations that like his bases were covered, Like I rolled out all the excuses, well, the reason I do it that way is my mom just died of cancer. Do you have a tissue? We went through every possible iteration of anger, denial, excuse, all of that, until this manager was comfortable. And I think it was well worth the investment. And I chose that. Originally, I was just going to do the write-up myself. And I thought, well, I can't do that because that's not fair to this manager. Like, they have to learn this or they're never going to be successful. They're never going to move up in the organization, right? So we carved that time out, and long-term benefits weren't just for that manager, because now they have a skill that reduces things like HR complaints and, all of the extra work that goes into when you can't communicate well with the person you're trying to hold accountable, right?
Yeah, I love that because you're treating soft skills like they're hard skills. And that's exactly how it should be. Here's a window. We're actually going to review this. We're actually going to let you practice and flesh it out, show you how that works in a safe environment, and then have some scenarios where we can then bring that into the real world, because that's how life works. Like, these things aren't secrets. They're not advanced, but you do have to learn them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story. This is back when I was managing part of operations, and so I had hired one of the things I'd like to tell people that report to me was that I will always do everything I can as your manager to help you be successful. So if your performance is sledding, my first thought isn't going to be, okay, how do I manage this person out and replace them? It's always going to be, what can I do to help you get better? And when I hired a couple supervisors, I told them the same thing. That's how I'm going to manage you. And so I walked them through and let them observe how I handled situations, kind of like you're talking about. Let them see, here's how you do this, or here's how you can do this. So then when we went, and the pandemic hit, and we went remote, and we had an employee that all of a sudden kind of just dropped off the radar. It wasn't logging in, or when they were logging in, it was odd hours. Work wasn't getting done, and we couldn't get a hold of them. Phone calls, emails, IMs, just couldn't get a hold of them. And I was to the point where, like, do I call a reference check, like a well check, call the cops, say, hey, can you go to this house? Because I don't know if my employee is okay. Got to that level, but I couldn't because we didn't have the correct address on file. So finally we got, long story short, got in touch with them and all that. And they were, giving some excuses and whatnot. And I was to the point where I'm like, you know what? I think we just need to cut ties with this person. I've done what I can. Talked with HR. HR's talked, and everyone's been talking to this individual, and I'm kind of like, all right, well, she didn't report to me at that point. This new supervisor was her manager, and I told him, you know what, if you decide you want to just terminate her and we'll replace the position, I'm supportive of that. And he goes, you know what, Kyle, I'm now her manager. I've not done everything that I can do to help this person be successful, and I would like the chance to do that. And I go, did you just quote me to me? He goes, yeah. I'm like, well played. All right, go. And I left the department not long after that for this role I'm in now. But I do know shortly after that, on our team calls, like, this individual would never speak of her team calls. Like, I don't know, a week after that, she actually cracked a joke to open up the meeting.
Wow.
And all of a sudden she was like engaging that way. I'm like, huh, shit. I was ready to, write this person off, and, maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel. So anyway, that was just one of the kind of moments when the student has, taught the teacher something.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple of thoughts there. First, Jake, you're absolutely right on the soft skills part of it. Like, they can be practiced. The reason I think that there's a gap there is that most of our operational leaders aren't very skilled in that. It's just not a priority, particularly when we're talking about engineering, manufacturing, operations. For years has been engineering driven, which makes sense. It's physics, right? But when you go to engineering school, at least when I did, there was a lot of math and theory and modeling and all of that, and not a lot of, but you have to be able to explain this to the guy that runs the machine for a living, right? Or the guy who runs the factory who used to run the machine for a living, And so I think there's just a lack of skill depth there. But at the same time, man, it's just like baseball. If you want to be good at baseball, you have to get in the batting cage. If you want to be good at writing people up, you have to do it over and over and over. You can't get good at baseball by reading a book or having a conversation. You have to practice it, right? You can't get good at writing people up from attending an HR conference or a seminar. You just can't. Like, you have to do it, right? And part of developing your team is giving them the opportunity to do those things, or in my case, simulating it, right? As close as we can, to the real thing, as well as sitting in on other meetings and watching folks do it, that sort of thing. And then for your part, Kyle, when we are discussing performance issues and we have sort of reached the bottom of the barrel, the end of the rope, we're done with our own skill set. We are sort of taught to think in terms of writing people off, or, terminating the employee, or something like that, where I'm going to do everything I can to get them to win, and then, okay, we can't, so we're going to part ways, something like that. But there's a lot of situations where the person is just not cut out for the role or even the company. Like, that's a real thing. And we need to be comfortable with, I get it, because people have to pay their bills, right? And being terminated is a big fear for some people, right? Or losing their job for any reason is a big fear for some people. But we also have to be honest on, both sides of the conversation. Like, this might just not be for you. You're a tiger and I'm trying to teach you to be the bear riding the unicycle. You're not a bear, from the circus. Like, they have the bear on the, do they still do circuses?
Yep. I don't know. You showed your age there.
The point is that some roles and the rules for that role and the responsibilities and they're just not a good match. And that should be I think that should enter into the conversation earlier rather than later. right? Had a fella, he's very successful now, a supervisor. Before, when he was an hourly operator, he couldn't come to work on time. So he worked first shift, started at 7 a.m., which, is a late start for a first shift, right? A lot of factories, first shift starts earlier than that. But 7 a.m. and couldn't make it, and he was going to get fired for attendance. And so the operations manager just said, hey, dude, here's your choices, right? We can go down the progressive write-up path, or you can move to second shift. The guy was like, oh, thank God. I've been, a night owl my whole life. Boom, instant success story, right? So just an example, the way that guy's circadian rhythm was set up, he was 5 hours ahead of everybody else, and so midnight would come along and everyone's wrapping up and he'd be like, well, that was great. So who wants to go get a beer? So he was strong all the way to the end of the shift. And the manager had the sort of common sense to take advantage of that and work, with the guy's strengths. So it's just an observation I've had as I've gone along is sometimes we're stuck in this mold of the way we do things is the only way. And my job is to get this person to be successful in this way we've always done things, instead of maybe zooming out a little bit and seeing the big picture of success. And wait a minute, what's this person good at and bad at? And what rules can I bend to make them successful and then the company successful by extension, right?
Right. No, absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was fascinating to talk a little bit about the world of finance and lean, and also learning about all of the similarities in the problems you have, the solutions, and all of that stuff. How can folks get in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Very active on there, very responsive to messages, and appreciate any interaction I can get with my posts, where a lot of learning happens. I'll leave the audience with one thing to think about: is experience comes from poor judgment.
Jake, you're the most experienced person I know. And on that note, have a good week, everybody.